So I just completed my very first century. 100! 100! And it was pretty easy. If you don't know what a century is, let me explain. It's a crazy thing that cyclists find fun, and it's when you ride your bike 100 miles in one day. Now, I know what you're thinking.
This dude is crazy. Definitely a liar.
Here's the thing. I'm not any of those things. It's true, my first century was easy. So let me tell you the real truth. Training for the century, that was the hard part. But let me tell you how all of this happened. First thing I'd like to say is I've been a cyclist for a while now, mostly getting into bike packing and long day rides, staying away from paved roads and trying to stay on gravel and dirt surfaces as much as I possibly can. I honestly never thought I'd be the guy wearing spandex and weird cycling shirts, but here I am. So lame. But the thought of a century never really crossed my mind until my friend Emily mentioned that it was even a possibility. I never really even thought that I would do it. But the more I rode, the more I realized this is probably something I want to do. And just this past winter, I kind of realized like this thing is actually something I could do and want to do. At the start of this, I was definitely naive, thinking I already kind of knew what I was doing. This isn't going to be hard. I could just ride out, eat some granola bars and some snacks and be totally fine. But to be honest, I couldn't be more wrong. The more that I dove in and as weeks went by, the more I realized there was more to this than I had initially thought. And so I started a training program. It's honestly really simple. You ride as much as possible, 2 to 3 times a week. One of those bike rides was a really long ride, and every week, that really long ride would get about 10 miles longer. We ended up getting up to about 80 miles for that really long ride. The other 2 rides were either short and fast or leisure, just depended on the day. Simple, right? Well, not exactly. I started my training in January, when the weather is less than ideal. So the days that came up to ride, I really had to ride. In the wind, in the cold, no matter what. I rode after snowstorms, I rode after rainstorms. I did what I had to do to get those miles in. I just kept telling myself this was also mental toughness training. As the rides got longer, I would get more and more tired, and after about 40 miles, I would start to bonk out. And I couldn't figure out why. Am I a fat loser? Am I getting too old? Are my legs too weak? The answer is no to all of those things. But the answer is nutrition, but not just any nutrition. Carbs. Lots and lots of carbs. Carbs. Lots of carbs. Lots and lots of carbs. 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 There's got to be something in there. The surprising part wasn't eating. It was actually how much I was eating and when I was supposed to be eating. Turns out for me, it was a lot. Here's the types of things I would eat. The night before, I would make some sort of pasta dish, keep it healthy and mix in proteins like chicken and veggies, throw in some bread, skip the beer. For breakfast on the morning of the ride, my go-to became a stack of 4 Eggo waffles, a bowl of healthy cereal, a cup of yogurt, glass of OJ, cup of coffee, and right before I walked out the door, I'd muscle down a banana. Now the fun part, ride nutrition, and possibly the biggest eye-opener to success for me. I ate so much while riding. I would eat between 40 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. It was an immediate change. I went from bonking after about 30 or 40 miles to being able to ride 50, 60, 70, or even 80 miles. After that, there was really no doubt that we couldn't do it. Other key factors to ensuring that the ride was successful was ensuring that my bike fit properly. I didn't tinker too much with it, but as we all know, I tinkered. I wanted to keep things as simple and lightweight as possible. I didn't want to be carrying around a ton of extra weight for that 100 miles. I learned about bibs and the importance of a quality bib. I ended up using the Ultimate Adventure bib from Black Bibs. I learned about jerseys and how incredibly useful those rear pockets are for snacks and cameras and extra items. I learned a ton about staying warm when riding in the cold, with sock covers and shoe covers and thicker gloves and glove liners and sock thingies that covered your head and base layers. If you've never worn a mesh base layer, you definitely should. It's a life-changing experience. And they look sexy as hell. Things I did to keep the training interesting were things like switching up the types of rides. Aside from those long rides, I would do slow, enjoyable rides, oftentimes skipping the whole cycling kit and reverting back to my joyriding days and switching up my routes and locations. I also threw in possibly the worst thing that I hated doing was intervals. Eventually those intervals just became short, intense rides rather than actual intervals because intervals are the worst. I wasn't alone. I had my best friend Misty with me the entire time, training with me, learning with me. It wasn't always easy for her either. There were so many days we wanted to quit. We got in fights, we annoyed each other. I also had my other best friend, Emily. She's basically a badass when it comes to bikes and outdoor activities. Emily literally skis uphill. Yes, that's a thing. You should Google it. It's called skinning. Emily was essentially our coach. Even though I didn't think she really wanted to be our coach, we kind of forced it on her. I can't not mention my beautiful wife. She put up with a lot of the training shenanigans as well, listening to me complain, pushing me, giving me the time and the space to do the training. When it comes to training for these types of things, you never really realize how much time away from your family or how it impacts those people around you. So thank you to my beautiful, beautiful wife for giving me the time and space to make this thing happen. So I guess after all of that, there was really only one thing to do: ride the damn Century. We chose to ride the Capitol Trail. It's a roughly 50-mile paved and mostly flat trail in Virginia that runs from Williamsburg to Richmond. So if you ride it out and back, you get your 100 miles. Normally, I think most people ride this trail from Williamsburg to Richmond, but since Emily was coming down from Pennsylvania, we chose to ride from Richmond to Williamsburg. And so the stage was set. We rented a little apartment right near the trailhead and spent the weekend there. We found a great local spot to load up on carbs for dinner. The morning of the ride, Emily drove down from Pennsylvania before sunrise to meet up with us. We were more or less ready to go when she got there. With our bellies full, we set out to a dreary, overcast, foggy, chilly, slightly windy, and misty morning. And immediately we were met with a hill that we knew would be looming over us for the rest of the day. A hill that would stand in our way of completion. A hill so steep, some of us chose to... I didn't know either. I mean, I guess we could have gone that way. But the good news is this is the last thing we get to do today. The ride itself was fairly straightforward. Everything is marked extremely well. The path is clear, there are plenty of places to stop and fill water, fix your bike, or use the bathroom and stretch. The ease of this trail was the reason we chose it as our first Century. By the time we got to Williamsburg, the sun had broke through the clouds. We were greeted by Misty's aunt and cousin at the end of the trail. They resupplied us with water and definitely good vibes. And then we stopped off at a little spot called Spoken Art and got some real food, and was the last significant break before heading back. Back at the apartment, we had a pot roast cooking in a crock pot, just waiting for us when we got back. It was our goal to consume this pot roast with all of our hearts. The afternoon was the exact opposite of the morning. The wind was at our backs, the sun was shining, the playlist was on point. We will wake up. And at last, we hit 100 miles. We had done it. It wasn't as emotional as I thought it was going to be. I was a bit confused at first as to why, but this didn't really hit me until afterwards. But there was still one obstacle in our way. The hill at Libby Hill. I was determined to ride up the damn hill. After riding over 100 miles, I wasn't walking my bike up the stupid hill. As the hill approached, literally just after the finish line of the Capitol Trail, I knew this hill ain't shit, and we did it. Yes, even Misty rode up the hill. Well, half of the hill. Gonna go back down and come back up?
I didn't hate the comment though.
It wasn't that bad. It's kind of disappointing. I almost came up this. And once we got back to the apartment and got cleaned up, and had once again fill our bellies, this time with protein, because it's all about that post-ride nutrition and recovery too, I thought back to why completing the century wasn't emotional to me at all. I think it's just because there was never really a doubt that we couldn't accomplish it. Sure, I was happy as hell, but I got to hang out with my friends and ride my bike all day. I attribute all of this to the training that we did and prepared for months prior to this ride. All of those cold days in the snow, frozen hands and toes, sore bodies, stiff joints. We were ready for the challenge. And nothing was going to, nor did stop us from accomplishing our goal. Today is day one. Day one of what, you ask? It's day one of training. And I'm training to do my very first century.